Imagine building something from nothing, pouring 5 years of your life into it, watching it grow from a small idea into a business that actually works, and then, one day, someone hands you a piece of paper and takes it all away. That's exactly what happened to a man named Sam Walton. And most people don't know this part of his story because everyone remembers what he built after, not what was taken from him before. This is the story of how a small-town store owner got kicked out of his own shop and used that heartbreak to build the largest retailer on earth. Sam Walton wasn't born into money. He grew up during the Great Depression, in a farming family in Oklahoma, at a time when almost nobody had much of anything. His father worked in farm mortgages, which, during the Depression, meant one grim job above all else: repossessing farms from families who couldn't pay. Sam watched that. He watched what it looked like when people lost everything, and whether he realized it at the time or not, it planted something in him, an obsession with value, with saving people money, with never wanting to be the reason someone struggled. To help his family, young Sam took on jobs most kids his age weren't doing. He milked cows and sold the milk. He delivered newspapers. By the time he was a teenager, he was already one of the paper's top salesmen in the state. He wasn't just working, he was hustling. That instinct never left him. He went on to study economics at the University of Missouri, and after graduating, he did something that would define the rest of his life. He took a job at a company called J.C. Penney as a management trainee. It paid barely enough to live on, but it taught him the retail business from the ground up. How stores were run, how customers behaved, how margins worked. Then World War II came, and Sam served in the army. When he came home, he had a decision to make. He wasn't rich. He didn't have a business empire waiting for him. What he had was retail experience, a sharp mind for numbers, and a wife, Helen, who believed in him. So in 1945, Sam Walton borrowed money, $20,000 from his father-in-law, plus his own savings, and took over a small variety store in Newport, Arkansas. It was a Ben Franklin store, part of a franchise chain. Sam didn't own the building. He didn't even own the brand. He just leased the space and ran the operation. But what he did have was an idea that would change retail forever: sell things cheaper, in higher volume, and still make a profit. Instead of marking products up as high as competitors did, Sam kept his margins thin and made it up by selling more. It sounds obvious now. It wasn't obvious then, and it worked. Within 5 years, Sam had turned that single small-town store into the highest-performing Ben Franklin franchise in the entire region. Sales that had been around $72,000 a year when he took over were now pushing past $250,000. He built something real, something that, by every measure, was a success story already. Then came the moment nobody talks about. Sam Walton didn't own the building his store was in. He'd signed a 5-year lease back in 1945, and buried inside that lease was a clause he hadn't paid close enough attention to at the time. It gave the landlord the option to not renew if he decided he wanted the space back for himself, and that's exactly what happened. The landlord had been watching Sam's success. He'd watched a struggling little store turn into the top-performing location in the entire regional chain, and instead of rewarding Sam for that success, he saw an opportunity for himself. When the lease came up in 1950, the landlord refused to renew it, not because Sam had done anything wrong, not because the business was failing, because it was succeeding, and the landlord wanted that success for his own son. Just like that, Sam Walton lost the store he'd spent 5 years building. Everything: the customer relationships, the systems he'd developed, the reputation he'd earned in that town. None of it mattered legally, because he didn't own the real estate underneath it. He'd built a thriving business on land he didn't control, and the man who did control it simply took it back. Picture that moment. You've worked for half a decade, turned around the failing store, built the best location in your entire franchise network, and it's gone. Not sold, not closed, taken. Most people would have been finished, crushed. It would have been reasonable to give up on retail altogether. Sam Walton did the opposite. Losing that store taught Sam Walton something he would never forget for the rest of his career. Never again build something you don't own the foundation of. He and Helen picked up what little they had and moved to Bentonville, Arkansas, a small, unremarkable town. There, Sam opened a new store, but this time, he did something different. He made sure the real estate was locked down properly. He negotiated long leases with strong protections, and eventually, wherever he could, he pushed to own the land his store sat on outright. That single, painful lesson from Newport became one of the foundational strategies of everything Sam built afterward. Years later, this obsession with owning and controlling real estate, buying land in small towns before competitors even realized those towns mattered, became one of the quiet, unglamorous reasons his company was able to expand faster and cheaper than anyone else in the industry. But the bigger lesson wasn't just about real estate. It was about resilience. Sam didn't waste time being bitter. He didn't slow down. Within about a year of losing the Newport store, he had a new one open in Bentonville, smaller, humbler, starting over almost from scratch. He kept experimenting. He traveled around the country, visiting competitor stores, studying what worked and what didn't, taking notes like a student instead of a struggling shop owner. He believed, stubbornly, in one core idea. If you sell things people need, a price is lower than anyone else, and you treat customers well, people will come back. Over and over. That idea never left him. Through the 1950s, Sam expanded one small variety store at a time, mostly in small towns that bigger retailers ignored. He wasn't trying to compete in big cities. He specifically targeted the towns everyone else overlooked, because there was less competition and lower costs. And because, deep down, those small towns were the world he understood best. By 1962, 12 years after losing everything in Newport, Sam Walton opened the very first store carrying a new name, a name built on everything he'd learned. The hard way, the humble way, the resilient way. He called it Walmart. That first Walmart in Rogers, Arkansas, looked nothing like the massive superstores we know today. It was simple, unglamorous, but it carried the same philosophy that had made his very first store a success. Low prices, high volume, and relentless attention to what customers actually wanted. Sam Walton didn't stop learning. He was famous for flying himself around the country in a small plane, landing near competitor stores, and walking the aisles himself, sometimes with a notepad in hand, other times just counting cars in the parking lot to estimate how well a location was doing. He wasn't chasing glamour, he was chasing information, and slowly, store by store, town by town, Walmart grew. By 1970, there were enough locations that Sam took the company public, raising the capital to expand even faster. Through the 70s and 80s, Walmart's expansion accelerated, dramatically spreading across the American South, then the Midwest, then the entire country. By the time Sam Walton passed away in 1992, Walmart had grown into the largest retailer in the United States. Today, it's one of the largest companies on the planet, employing over 2 million people worldwide, with stores in nearly every corner of the globe. And it all traces back to a 5-year lease, and the day a landlord decided to take a thriving business away from the man who built it. Here's what's remarkable about Sam Walton's story. The moment that could have ended everything, losing that first store in Newport, is the exact moment that shaped the empire he eventually built. If that landlord had simply renewed the lease, Sam Walton might have spent his whole life running one successful store in one small Arkansas town. Instead, that loss forced him to rebuild smarter, more carefully, more strategically, and ultimately, bigger than he ever could have imagined. It's a reminder that the worst moments in a story aren't always the end. Sometimes, they're the exact point where everything starts. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more untold origin stories behind the world's biggest companies. New videos every Thursday.